Welcome to 2 Cents We See Scary Movies, the podcast where we dive into horror films one theme at a time. Every month we pick a theme and every movie we review fits within that theme. Sometimes perfectly and sometimes, well, we do our best. I'm Talon, the one who could absolutely survive a horror movie, except for the part where I trip over nothing and get taken out immediately by a rock. And my co-host is Dan, who, if given the choice between investigating a creepy noise or burning the whole house down in moving states, is already looking at Zillow listings. This week we're covering Lake of Death, a film that proves once again that remote cabins, deep lakes, and unresolved trauma are a combination best avoided. Let's get into it. So, Lake of Death, the Norwegian title is, I looked up how to pronounce this, Det does Gjør. Sure. It's a 2019 Norwegian supernatural horror film written and directed by Ninni Bull Robsam. The movie is a modern remake of the 1958 film Lake of the Dead. It has an IMDb rating of 4.2 out of 10. It is roughly about 94 minutes long.
Okay, so to start out for me, like, I honestly didn't think I was going to have to read things while I tried to watch it.
Oh, I was pissed. I was so pissed. I was like, fuck. I picked one with fucking subtitles. I know it's very American of me, but even in regular English speaking shows or movies, I fucking hate captions. They drive me crazy, mainly because I just get so fixated on them, even though I don't need to. I can hear it. And it was funny because while I was watching it, I kept turning up the volume, thinking, I don't know, I think that I was going to hear it in English suddenly if I turned it up. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. I don't even know what they're saying.
Right.
I kept doing it. I was like, you're a dumbass.
I kept on looking for, like, an English dub version.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
Nothing.
Not for us, no.
I didn't even think to look for that.
And to the Norwegian folks who might be listening, if we reach that far, we do apologize. We are dumb Americans.
Well, it's not like everybody speaks every language anyway. I mean, I'm sure it probably sucks for them when they have to watch an English movie that's spoken
Right.
English. I mean, hell, if I watch a British English movie, it takes my brain like 45 minutes to fucking understand what they're saying, especially if it's like really strong Cockney. I can't.
Right.
I'm like, what the fuck are they talking about? Because it's so thick. And I'm like, I know these are English words, but I don't know what they're saying. And then it literally takes like 45 minutes for my brain to get used to it. And then by the end of the movie, I'm speaking that way. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, look at it this way. You know, it's kind of the equivalent of our Deep South.
Right.
Cockney is basically redneck.
Right. Well, yeah. Or Deep South for you guys. And then for the Deep South, it'd be like listening to Down Easterners.
Correct.
Yeah, it'd be like.
Nope, that's fair.
The movie opens with a young man and a woman in a boat on a lake. He is using sign language, but she is speaking and not returning the sign language. Like she's not doing sign language back to him.
Right, she's speaking.
Right. She's just speaking. The first time I watched it, I'm like, I don't understand. I guess he's just reading her lips. I don't know.
Well, I was like that through a lot of it. Like, I don't know what's going on.
He eventually gives her a locket, which has pictures of both of them inside. He places it around her neck.
Creepily.
Yeah.
In a very creepy way.
Yeah, this whole scene.
It was very incestuous.
It was. It had a very weird... They had a weird connection.
On his part. More on his part than hers.
He looked terrified the whole damn time.
Right.
So he puts it around her neck. She tells him that even though she's just got there, she has to leave again, and she is leaving with Kai, who we don't know at the moment. The young man doesn't look happy about this. He signs something to her that looks like he's pointing and out to the lake, which to me at the time, I thought he was saying, like, you're leaving or you're going.
I thought that too.
Yeah. So then he signs something to her. She responds, "You will always be my brother." And so when that was said, I was like, oh, they're brother and sister?
Right.
Okay. Because this feels weird. Like there was some kind of weirdness going on.
Right.
But anyway, it was a little bit of a tense moment because she did seem very uncomfortable with the whole, not even just his weirdness about being a little too chummy. If that's how I want to say it. But also just like she felt apprehensive about telling him that she had to leave. All right, so then we jump forward a year, and there's a group of 5 friends that are traveling by train to, we find out, a remote cabin in the woods. Among them is Lillian, the girl from the opening scene that we just talked about, along with her friends Sonia, Harold, Bernard, and Gabriel. Bernard, who has a paranormal podcast, he calls it a parapodcast,
Right.
is recording audio for his next episode in which he explores Norwegian folklore, or it could be his whole thing is about Norwegian folklore. I wasn't really sure. And we also find out that Sonia and Harold are a couple. They're together. I wasn't sure at this time because it felt like Gabriel and Lillian were a couple, but it also felt like they weren't. There was a weird disconnect there, but it seemed like they were. But I just didn't know if maybe it was just because of her state of mind that she was feeling off with him or whatever. They eventually get to their destination, which is in the middle of nowhere. Doesn't even look like a train station. It's like they were just dumped out on the side of the track.
Yeah, just dumped on the road.
Like, it was like, what is this? And they're just sitting in tall grass and weeds and whatever.
Right.
And the train track is literally right there. Like a train could come by and squish them.
Right.
It was funny.
But there was no station.
No, there was nothing. It's like they just literally just, okay, jump.
Right.
Get out. So then you find out some of the people, they're not all necessarily friends because some of them haven't seen each other for a while, but which are friends. But then there's others that don't know each other at all. They're just meeting for the first time. Gabriel, who lets everyone know that he studied psychology, reveals that Lillian lost her twin brother, Bjorn, a year ago. He went for his usual walk in the woods and never came back. And it was weird because the way, now I did not write that exactly how he said it, because the way he said it made it sound like every year he takes a walk in the woods.
Right. That's what I got too.
I was like,
I'm like, good for him. Like a lot of people might do it daily.
Right. Like you live in a cabin in the middle of the woods and you only walk in the woods once a year.
Right.
So I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I just took it wrong, so I just wrote it a different way. He went for his usual walk in the woods, never came back. They searched for him for weeks, but found nothing. Only a letter that he left behind, which Lillian doesn't like to talk about the fact that she lost her brother or that he's missing or whatever. I also want to point out here, though, that they never addressed this letter again. And there are two things in this movie in particular that are brought up that never gets addressed. And I feel like they should have, simply due to being mentioned, because they literally make a point, though, they couldn't find him. All that was left was a letter. And I feel like, well, okay, then maybe sometime later on, they're going to tell us something. So the letter is going to be read and it'll reveal to us what the fuck something, right?
Right.
Nothing. Didn't you say in one of our other episodes where if something's mentioned?
Yeah. If something's mentioned in a story, it's usually going to be used later on. Like if you introduce a gun, it's going to be used somehow.
Right. Yeah, that's how I felt about this mention of this letter. So I felt like, okay, that means something, but then it means nothing. And the other thing is later on, which we'll get to. As they continue to wait for their ride, Lillian is just kind of walking back and forth along the train tracks. She's distant, not distant like a far away from the group, but she's just kind of not hanging out with the group. She's very obviously bothered by something.
Yeah, she's not socializing. She's just kind of like lost in her own world walking on the train track.
Yeah, exactly. So Gabriel goes on to explain that they're heading back to the cabin where Lillian used to spend time with her brother or lived with her brother. And he believes that this trip will help her process what happened and hopefully it will provide her closure.
Right, because she's also going to be selling the cabin.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I forgot about that. I watched it twice. I totally forgot about that. But I remember now that you're saying it.
And it's the last trip that she's going to make.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's going to give some closure.
So then a car pulls up, a man gets out, and we find out it's Kai. And they seem very happy to see each other. It's kind of the only time in the movie where she actually doesn't seem overly awkward or uncomfortable. They obviously hadn't seen each other for a while. They share a very long, warm embrace. Oh, and Lillian also has a dog named Toto, who, unlike the Wizard of Oz version, is a big dog. Eventually, the rest of the group heads over to the car. They make their acquaintances with Kai, and then they head to the cabin. As the group arrives at the cabin, we immediately get our first unsettling moment. Lillian pauses, staring at the house, and for a brief second, she sees a figure standing in the upstairs window. She kind of looks away, but then she looks back, and it's gone. Classic horror setup there. There's a lot of like, wow, I've never seen that before moments in this movie. Then there's Toto, who is on a leash. They're walking towards the cabin. And at one point, the dog just stops and refuses to go anywhere near the house. He whines, digs in his paws, and does that classic animals sense something before humans do thing and knows something ominous is going on.
And that's the thing. Like we talk about a lot about how there's always that one guy or that one person that's always like, hey, let's go. Let's just keep going.
Right.
Listen to the dog.
Right. No one ever listens to the dog.
The dog is always right.
Right. Look at Scooby-Doo.
Exactly.
Always like, get the hell out of here. And no one's ever listening. Once everyone settles in, they do what every horror movie friend group does, and they jump into the lake for some fun. But Lillian doesn't join it. Instead,
she's just on the dock.
Just sitting on the dock, watching everybody else. She looks over the edge of the dock and sees 2 lily pads in the water. But then lurking beneath the lily pads is this figure of a man. And she stares at it for quite a little while until Bernard, who has gotten out of the lake, splashes her with some water, startles her. She looks up at him. He invites her to go in. She doesn't really say anything, but looks back in the water. And of course, the figure is gone yet again, just like in the window. Eventually, all the friends climb out of the water, gather on the dock. They're just sitting there. And then Kai shows up. Bernard immediately jumps in and asks him if he can ask him a few questions about the podcast that he's doing. Bernard asks Kai about the lake and brings up the local legend, specifically that the lake is haunted. Kai confirms that there is a legend, and it's about a man named Gruyek. Gruvik.
Yeah, Gruvik.
Yeah. So Kai tells the story. Apparently, back in the 1920s, Gruvik lived in a cabin by the lake with his wife and son. He was a war veteran, but at some point, something changed in him. He became obsessed with this lake. So much so that he would just sit and watch it for hours. He wouldn't leave. He wouldn't do anything else. He would just stare at the lake. Eventually, his wife got fed up with living with a man who did nothing but lake watch all day. So she found herself a lover in the woods. Why this man was just hanging out in the woods? I don't know. That's where I always go to find my lovers.
Yeah, I mean there's the lady in the water that's out there. There's Snow White that's out there.
And dwarves. There's dwarves out
and
there.
Dwarves. Yeah, dwarves, absolutely. Right.
It's a perfect place to find men. She found him. She found this guy, and they started an affair. So, of course, Gruvik eventually found out. And what does he do? Well, he slits both their throats. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he takes a boat out middle of the lake, ties stones to his own feet, and jumps in, drowning himself. At this point, there's a brief shot of Harold, who was the guy that's in the couple with Sonia. He and Sonia are sitting there together, and they're looking at each other and giggling. We see that Lillian notices something strange on him, and it's a black spot that's kind of right over his heart area, but it's like under the skin, but you can see it. It's like this just blackness, and then there's veins of black coming out from it. But no one else seems to see it, though. Only she sees it. But then, of course, something happened, and it distracted her for a second, and then it was gone. So she just keeps kind of hallucinating and seeing things. Someone asks Kai what happened to the son, because the guy, Gruvik, killed the wife and the lover, but there was still a son out there. And he says, I don't know. It's just a story, so I'm not sure what happened. Which 2 times the son is brought up. This is another one of those movies, by the way, where they throw everything together. But they almost like, oh, the son is still alive out there. But this was back in 1920. I mean, I don't know how much this son would be doing at this day and age.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, considering he'd be 80 in 2000.
Right. He's like, what? If he was 1920, he'd be 105 years? Well, I don't know what year. What did I say the year the movie came out?
This was 2019.
19. Okay, so yeah, he'd be...
So he'd be about 99 years old, 100 years old. You know, he might be a little frail.
A little bit. Then Gabriel jumps in, and of course, being the psychologist, he starts kind of analyzing it a little bit, how these kinds of myths form. He explains that over time, people have associated the lake with death, sickness, and accidents. He even brings up how back in the day, families with sick children couldn't afford medical care, so they just drowned them in the lake. So I thought, wow, instead of just waiting to let them either just die naturally from the illness, or maybe they could pull through. No, we're just going to throw them in the lake. We're not going to chance it either way. Okay. That makes sense. He also mentions another myth, one that says if someone sinks to the bottom of the lake, they'll live forever. Apparently, also people would whistle to lure their children into the boats. I don't know, creepy, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, there's that or adoption.
Right.
You know?
I just don't understand, like, if my kid was sick and I couldn't give them medicine, and I'm living back in the 20s, why bother killing them when either one of 2 things are going to happen? They're going to die. So just let them die from the illness, or they could just make it through. Why would you risk that? I don't understand.
1920s, they'd have to feed them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and give them like drink and water and take care of them and hope that they get better. So they just took the 50-50 chance and just said, hey, just go for broke. Cut our losses.
That's 100% chance. I'm pretty
Right.
sure. Later that evening, we see Kai and Lillian inside this shed. There's an old radio, and Kai uses it to call out and says, "This is Werner Cabin. Can anyone hear me?" And then no one replies right away. And I don't know how that works. Like when you radio out, does it just keep going out? You just let them do it one time and it just goes out indefinitely until someone replies?
No,
Because
it's like walkie talkies.
right. That's what I thought. But it's a while before somebody replies. I don't know. Maybe they were just busy and like, oh, I'll get to it later. I guess. I don't know. So Lily and Kai start talking. She asks him how he's been, and he says fine, but there's something in his tone. Then he adds, "It's been a year, Lillian, a year that I've been waiting to see you, and now you're just going to disappear again." Then she starts to say something about Bjorn. She doesn't finish the sentence because he cuts her off and says, "So you're just giving up on us."
Yeah, and he's expecting her to get over it in a year. I mean, people grieve at different paces, and I would say a year is not a lot of time.
No, not
He's just like,
especially.
get over it and let's move on.
Everybody really wants to get over this. We don't even know he's dead. He's just
No, and-
missing.
Right. And we are also talking about people talking about drowning their kids in the lake. So, I mean, I guess it is fair to say just get over it.
Right. Maybe this is a Norwegian thing. Like they're just real quick to get over stuff. He tells her what happened to Bjorn isn't her fault. Then there's a response over the radio finally. And the voice comes through confirming, "Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear," because he wanted to know what was going on. And Kai just said, "We're just testing it out." So yeah, after like 5 minutes, the guy responded. Anyway, so they leave the shed. Kai tells Lillian that there were some burglaries in the area recently, but nothing too serious. She asks him if he's staying, and he tells her no, he has to leave, but he'll be back in 3 days.
Yeah, he keeps leaving.
Yeah, I'm not even sure like why.
I don't know, but he just keeps disappearing.
Yeah, I wanted to know why though. Like why are you leaving? Do you have a wife and kids at home? Like what's going on? Like what's making you leave? I don't know. The script is doing it. The script is making him leave. The only thing I can think of.
Well, and the thing is, like, I thought it was going to be something to do with the story, but it turns out to be nothing.
Right.
He just leaves.
Yeah.
I mean, he could go off and like kill people or something, but no, he just leaves and comes back.
Well, I think also because there are so many different avenues that they take in this movie of who it could be that's doing all this stuff. I think he had to leave, even though honestly I knew what was going on from the beginning. I think anybody could probably tell what was going to happen, but they want you to think maybe it's this person. Oh, maybe it's this person. Oh, maybe it's that person. And so him leaving made it so that he was a possible person who was doing all the stuff that was going on. I think that's the other reason why he had to leave for story purposes. He tells her he'll be back in 3 days. Then there's this moment between them, something unresolved, something still hanging in the air. They step closer to each other. Kai looks at her and says, "I missed you." And then he kisses her. And it's a nice, wonderful, passionate kiss. You could tell that there's many unresolved feelings there.
Yes.
They never do tell you why they broke up anyway. I don't think. I don't remember. Maybe they did and I missed it.
It's probably because she couldn't get over it.
Right. He's like, "Get over it, I'm leaving." And so he left. Later that night, it's the middle of the night. Everybody's asleep. Bernard's sleeping on the couch. The house is making all kinds of sounds. There's a lot of creaking and groaning. Then you kind of hear footsteps, but the house is really noisy. Like it settles hard at the end of the day. Bernard stirs. He wakes up. He looks around. He sits up. He's still kind of listening. Then he shakes it off like it's nothing. So he gets up and he heads towards the kitchen, goes over to the sink, get a glass of water, but the sounds are still going. But this time he distinctly hears footsteps. So he turns around again. He turns around and he sees this door in the other room that he just came from starting to slowly open from another room. So he whispers, "Hello?" but gets no response. So he moves toward the door, trying to position himself where he can peek around it without being seen by whatever might be on the other side. But when he finally gets a full view, he sees there's nothing there. So he walks into that room, looks around, still doesn't really see anything. He turns back like he's heading toward the other room, and the camera angle is right behind him, really tight on the back of his head. So it makes you feel like there's someone right behind him. But then he turns around, you don't see anyone right there. But then he does see in the distance Lillian, and she's standing in the corner of the room, just standing there, staring at the wall, completely unresponsive. totally made me think of Blair Witch Project.
Mhm.
Bernard says her name. There's no reaction. He says it again. Still nothing. He's, walking closer to her. She's just standing there. Then he reaches out and touches her. At that point, Sonia appears beside him and making him jump. She says, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I found her like this." She looks at her and she's like, "Oh, no, not again." Bernard reaches out again to touch Lillian and she stops him. She says, "Don't, you shouldn't wake a sleepwalker." He's like, "Why not?" And she said, "Because if she's dreaming, she's getting killed, she might die for real." And then Bernard looks at her like, "Oh, yeah, okay, sure." And like crazy fingers around the head and like makes a funny face. And then she randomly drops in English a horror reference. She lowers her voice and she says, "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy." So that was a little Nightmare on Elm Street reference.
I noticed this movie does a lot of references like that.
Right. At this point, Sonia gently takes Lillian's arm and starts guiding her back upstairs. And then I thought this was funny because Lillian is sleepwalking. She's supposed to be asleep, but somehow she's just casually walking up the steps. Like she knows that she's walking up the stairs in her sleep. Like, how did she do that with that? I don't know how sleepwalkers work.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I would think she'd be like,
I mean, because a lot of sleepwalkers get hurt because they think, in their dream they're walking straight, but then they walk down a flight of stairs.
Right. That's what I would think. Yeah. So, but somehow she's able to get the steps. I don't know.
Movie magic.
Right. She's navigating that shit like a pro. Bernard watching them go and he mutters, "I wasn't that scared." And then he turns, shuts the door that had mysteriously opened earlier, and then turns back, jumps at his own reflection in the mirror. I thought that was kind of funny because honestly, it was pretty relatable. I'm pretty sure it's happened to me a couple times. I scared the fuck out of myself. Actually, I feel like that happened not that long ago to me where I scared the shit out of myself.
Was it like yesterday?
Yeah. Then there's this really quick scene with Kai at his car, which I didn't even remember the first time I watched it. I didn't pick up on this until the second time I watched it. But Kai is at his car, which is parked by the lake, and he's doing something in the engine, like there's something wrong with the car. And then you can tell he hears a noise. He looks at the lake, and then he hears another noise, so he kind of looks the other way. And then that's it. That's the end of that scene. Nothing else.
Spooky.
Now the scene takes us back inside the house. We see Toto, the dog, lying on the floor. So I guess at some point they managed to get it back inside. Good job. Then the camera shifts to a first person perspective and you're like looking from the camera point of view and it moves through the house heading toward a door and the door creaks open on its own. The camera glides up the stairs into a room and that's where we see Lillian, who's in bed asleep. The camera pans to a dresser and sitting on top is a framed picture of her and her brother Bjorn. And the shot kind of lingers on it, really emphasizing this image like it wants us to take note, like it's going to be special or something. Doesn't really turn out to be anything except for a picture. Then it cuts back to Lillian. That's when we first see this strange thing happening. There's this black, oily, sludge-like substance, and it's on her hand. Then it's on her leg. Then suddenly it's everywhere. It's covering her face, her chest. At first, I thought it was just really dark blood. But then I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that's just some black, mucky something, right?
Lake goo.
Yeah. Seemed to have a consistency of blood, like the way it pooled and all that and dripped and stuff. But it was definitely just a black, sludgy, whatever. So then the bedroom door creaks open. Standing there in the doorway is Bjorn, and he looks very menacing. He doesn't look happy at all. His clothes are dripping wet. Water's pooling at his feet. Then it cuts to a flash of the lake where Bjorn is in the water and he's struggling and he's flailing. Looks like he's obviously drowning. And then he goes under. And then all of a sudden, Lillian wakes up. It was all a dream. I guess Toto's not actually in the house after all, which was the problem.
And I was going to say he was a good boy.
Yeah.
He's a bad boy.
So the next morning, Lillian heads downstairs into the kitchen. And when she gets down there, there's a dining table is fully set with plates, food. There's some orange juice, a whole breakfast already that's been prepared. She doesn't question it. She just kind of looks at it like, oh, okay. She grabs the orange juice, pours herself a drink. Then Sonia, she comes down the stairs and she's like, oh, breakfast is already made. Yay. And she doesn't question it either. Then one by one, everybody else joins. Bernard comes down. He's excited about the breakfast. Then Gabriel follows. Casually asks Lillian if she slept well. Lillian says yes. Bernard and Sonia immediately exchange looks because they know she didn't. Because they caught her sleepwalking last night, but they don't say anything. Lillian asks everyone, has anyone seen Toto? And no one has. Then as Gabriel walks to the sink, he fills up a glass of water. And Lillian sees it, instead of as water, she sees it as that black, thick,
sludge.
sludgy mess. And she watches him drink it, and when he drinks it, it starts coming out of his mouth, and it's just like oozing out of his mouth. Then she blinks, and suddenly it's just regular water. Then her hand starts shaking. She tries to hide it. You can tell that she knows she's having these visions, and it's obviously bothering her. Then Harold finally joins them. He sits down at the table, but of course, something's a little weird with him. And of course, there's also dirt all over the floor. And it's funny because you see it in the beginning when Lillian first comes into that room. But nobody that walks in mentions this dirt except for Harold, and he's the last one to enter the kitchen. But there's dirt all over the floor. There's a lot of it. And there's also something written on Harold's forehead. Sonia and Bernard notice thing on his forehead, and they kind of like smirk at him. They don't say anything to him. She asks Harold, did you go for a swim? And he says, no. And she says, are you sure you didn't get up and go for a swim and then come back? And he's like, no, I just got up. Why is there dirt on the floor? No one says anything. They just want to look at it, but no one says or thinks anything about this dirt except for him.
No one wants to take credit for it.
Right. No one wants to clean that shit up. Sonia then asks him again, okay, so you didn't get up, set the table, and go back to bed? And he's like, no. So then everyone starts looking around at each other. And basically, they're all like, well, if Harold didn't make breakfast, who did? Because they're all assuming Harold would be the one making breakfast because everyone else came down looking shocked about breakfast, I guess. So they just assume. Then they also all notice something even stranger. There's an extra plate at the table. At the end of the table, someone's already half-eaten piece of toast is on this plate. And everyone looks at it. Bernard finally asks, okay, so who's sitting there? No one knows. No one has an answer. So then Bernard's like, yeah, I'm not eating another bite of food until I know who made all this food and sat at the table and everything else. And
he grabs a bag of chips, and Sonia's like, chips for breakfast?
Right. It's better than poison.
I'm sorry, I've had chips for breakfast before.
Yeah. Chips are good. So then Gabriel asks, like, okay, who did it then? Bernard and Sonia glance at each other. And they both look at Lillian. So Lillian's like, what? Why are you looking at me like that? Sonia says, you were sleepwalking last night. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you. So then Lillian, you can tell she's feeling uncomfortable, not necessarily uncomfortable about it, but she's bothered by it and upset that she's sleepwalking again, because apparently this is a problem, along with all the other things going on with her, I guess. Eventually, she gets up and goes outside. Gabriel follows her, but back inside, Bernard makes a bold assumption that she must have made breakfast in her sleep. But she can walk up steps in her sleep. She can make breakfast. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Right. So Harold looks skeptically at him. It's like in her sleep. And Bernard's like, yeah, unless you're all messing with it. If everyone else is messing with him. Then Harold thinks, well, maybe it's you. Maybe you're doing it for your podcast. And this is where he does this a lot. Every time something happens, there's this paranormal podcast accusation going on between Harold and Bernard, because Harold frequently blames Bernard for everything weird happening, insisting he's staging it for his podcast content. Sonia finally points out the writing on Harold's forehead, and he kind of touches it, and he's like, well, what is it? What's on my forehead? And Bernard says it's ink, and it says down, which is spelled D-A-U, I think.
Yes.
Part of it was a little bit covered up, but I figured it was.
Yeah, it was D-A-U.
Yeah. So Harold is confused still, and he's like, what does that mean? And Bernard says it's Norwegian for dead. So then in the next scene, Lillian's outside hanging sheets on a clothesline, and these are very thin sheets, but they get used later for ghost costumes. And I thought when she was hanging them up, they seemed pretty thin, but when they were putting them on for ghost costumes, I was like, those are really, really thin sheets. So she's standing behind one of the sheets as she's clipping it up when she notices this figure of a guy through the sheet, and it looks like Bjorn. So she stares at it for a moment, and then she quickly pulls the sheet aside, and there's nothing there. It's just some trees and whatever. And then all of a sudden, Gabriel shows up. So he casually tells her, don't pay attention to Bernard's antics, or it's his coping mechanism, and that's why he says things that are strange, or does things that are strange. Then he asks her, do you remember when we were here? And I was like, hold on, what? What does that mean? Because Lillian hasn't been there in a year. And the last time she was there, when she was telling Bjorn, I'm headed out of town with Kai, she was with Kai. So when exactly, I don't know what time frame Gabriel's referring to. Like, how far back did they know each other even way before that? I don't know. It wasn't really clear.
It wasn't clear.
Yeah, it was confusing. So then Gabriel shifts the conversation. He tells her she needs to let it go. Bjorn, the past. He asks her if she wants to talk about it. She says, yeah, probably. And then he kisses her. And I'm like, oh, this girl's getting around. So this is our second kiss of the last, 30 minutes or whatever. He kisses her, but in this kiss, she's into it for a few seconds, but then she pushes away, which she did not do with Kai. She was very into the kissing with Kai. But there was something I did catch in this second viewing that I didn't catch in the first viewing, which explains a lot of stuff as to their relationship. I had a feeling there was something between Lillian, like I was saying in the beginning, I wasn't sure about Lillian and Gabriel, but this obviously confirms that something was going on between them. But she doesn't really want to kiss him back, and she pulls away. And then he's very disappointed. And he tells her, I only came on this trip for you, which is kind of a shitty thing.
Yeah, it's a crappy thing to say.
Right. It seems like a very kind of controlling, like that kind of way sometimes that people can be. Or like, I'm only here for you. I did look at what I did for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes that can be acceptable, but it depends on the tone and how it's being used.
Right.
And he said it in such a douchebag sort of way, which makes it feel very manipulative.
Yeah, and especially since it came after he kissed her and she pulled away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely had a really shitty connotation to it. She just kind of stares at him blankly. And then that's the end of that scene. So then the next scene takes us back down to the lake where Sonia and Harold are at the dock and they both jump into the water and they're just messing around, splashing, kissing, the usual two people in the water kind of thing. But there are a few underwater shots that immediately makes you think, oh, something's lurking beneath them. That kind of shot.
Yeah, kind of like the Jaws shots.
The legs are, and there's something down there, right? Then Harold suddenly makes this weird face and he's like, stop it, stop doing that, in a fun way, whatever. He says it. And Sonia's confused. She's like, I'm not doing anything.
That tickles.
She's like, I'm not doing anything. And he's like, that tickles, yeah. And Harold starts kind of nervously laughing. Sonia repeats, I'm really not doing it. Then Harold's expression shifts a little and his laugh goes away and he starts to look genuinely uneasy. She's like, I'm seriously not doing anything. Then Harold gets yanked under the water. Sonia spins around, looking all around. And I don't know why she's spinning around looking. I don't know. I felt like you saw him. He was right in front of you. If he went down right in front of you, then that's probably where he is. Go down there.
Well, I mean, he could have ran really fast and got to shore, or an alien abduction.
Right.
I mean, there's plenty more things that make more sense than being pulled under the lake.
Yes.
Right.
It could be a freshwater shark, because I think they mentioned a freshwater shark when they got in the water. So anyway, she's looking around. The water just kind of rippling. She dives under. Now you do see an underwater shot of him, but you don't see anything around him. So you don't see there's no hand holding him, nothing. He's just under the water. So she dives under, she's scanning the water. She sees Harold, I think, but she comes back up and she yells, help, help. And then she dives back down. I guess you don't see what she's doing under the water. I assume she sees him because, of course, the very next scene, she's dragging him into the house. He's unconscious. Bernard rushes over. He's like, what's going on? Sonia, who's panicked, he was dragged under the lake. He was dragged under the water. I don't know what happened. He's completely unresponsive. Bernard says he's calling an ambulance, but as soon as he says that, Harold throws up all over the floor and gasps for air, and he's caught. So then Gabriel walks in, wants to know what happened. Harold's, of course, in shock. Lillian comes in and everyone is just staring at him. And they're like, what happened? And Harold's obviously shaken. He's like, I was dragged under. Gabriel's like, by what? Harold, I don't know. I was just dragged. Gabriel presses on. Did you see anything? Bernard, who's trying to lighten the mood, suggests that I don't know if he's trying to lighten the mood, but he's trying to make it seem like something other than something grabbed him in the water, I guess. So he tells them it could have been a pike, because apparently pikes can get humongous. And he tells this story about a kid at a scout camp getting grabbed by one and there was blood. Okay.
A great scout story.
Right. But all the time that everybody's talking, Lillian is staring at Harold, and again she sees that black mark on his chest. Sonia tries to dismiss it all, and she's like, "It was just a cramp. It happens. He's fine." And then Harold's like, "Well, it didn't really feel like a cramp." Lillian suggests that they take him upstairs to let him rest, and they need to start cleaning up the floor and to move the rug because he threw up a little bit on the rug, I guess. So they push the rug back, and they discover a door in the floor. So Bernard's like, oh, there's a basement. And of course, Bernard, being Bernard, grabs his microphone, turns it on, and decides he's going down there. So he heads down. The stairs are dripping with water. I'm not sure where that water's coming from because where they were just above them, there's no water. I don't know where that water was coming from. And there's also like these thick vines that look like they're kind of around the stairs as well. And the whole place just seemed kind of damp and yucky.
Well, and the funny thing about it is, like, when I saw that, I'm just like, oh, this kind of reminds me of The Evil Dead. And then they mention, oh, yeah, it's just like The Evil Dead.
I forgot that part. But yeah, that's the other reference they had about movie stuff. And they're like, yeah, it's The Evil Dead. So Bernard flips on a light. It lights up that area of the basement, which now Gabriel is like, okay, I'll go down there now that there's a light on. So now they're both down in the basement poking around. There's a bunch of old furniture, strange paintings of children, creepy cobweb-covered doll, your classic horror basement, basically. Lillian ends up coming downstairs as well. Gabriel asks her, did you know this was down here? And she says no. They continue looking around, but then Lillian wanders just a little further in because the basement doesn't look very big at this point. Did you think it was a very big basement?
No, it didn't seem like it was big at all.
No, not at all.
But then also to make the point that they kind of harassed her a little bit. It's like, you've been coming here all this time. You didn't know that there was a basement?
I mean, if that rug has been there that whole time, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people don't tend to like move carpets around just for the fun of it.
Right. I don't think it was a very big rug. You think that maybe they would have picked it up to
clean it at some point, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily.
Kids, so.
Right, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that she would be the one doing it.
Right. Yeah.
And the parents may not just mention it because, I mean, there's nothing there to really be excited about. So why mention it to the kids?
Well, they were orphans.
That's true. They were orphans. That's right.
Because they didn't have parents.
Right. This was their house. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm not sure when this became their house because there's a story later on that she tells. But I don't know when or how they got this house. They don't really explain that. I don't think.
No, it wasn't clear because the way I took it was, oh, they're orphans and this is their house. And so like, have they been living there since they were 5?
That's what I thought. I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, they inherited this house. Their parents died. People just let them stay there and just fend for themselves. Whatever. Or maybe they had a caretaker at some point, but then once they aged out of a caretaker, the caretaker left. But yeah, I thought it was just their family home or something.
Yeah. It wasn't completely clear.
Yeah, it wasn't clear at all. So she doesn't know about this basement. So they start looking around more. Lillian wanders a little further into the basement, and that's when she sees this wall, and it has the black oily substance, but it's in the wall, kind of very similar to in Harold's chest, and it's creeping through the wall and looks almost like roots. But
yeah, I was going to say it's reminiscent of like a tree roots.
Yeah, very much so. Even though it's creeping through the wall like roots, then parts of it start dripping this goopy black stuff. And it just starts seeping down the wall. Meanwhile, Bernard, who is looking at all this stuff and talking on he's got his microphone thing, and he finds a desk and he opens a drawer and there's a book inside there and he opens it up and it's some kind of journal or diary. So he finds it interesting looking, but he doesn't really want to say anything. So he hides it in the back of his pants. Then it cuts back to Lillian and she's just seeing all this black sludge everywhere or whatever. Now she's completely covered in it as well. It's on her hands, her arms, her face. She's rubbing it in, like she's rubbing it in her face, rubbing it into her chest, like she's having a facial.
I was going to say, apparently it's good for the skin.
Right, it's great. So then
she did have good skin. I mean, she did have flawless skin, so maybe.
So she's rubbing in all this stuff, and she looks up and she sees Bernard and Gabriel, and they're also covered in it. They're just kind of standing there, but she's quiet. She's quietly freaking out. Like she did a pretty good job of, unlike how well those women in the other movies that they screamed really well.
Yeah.
She did a decent quiet freak out. Like you could see in her face that she was a little, I wouldn't say it was exceptional, but I feel like just that was kind of her personality. So she did emote it well enough to know that she was freaked out by it. And I felt like, in a way. Then the guys, they look at each other and they look at her and they're like, Lillian, are you okay? And now, of course, they're back to normal. They're not covered in gunk.
Goo zombies.
Yeah. So Lillian nods, says, yeah, I'm fine, and bolts up the stairs, which she's definitely not fine, obviously. You know how it is with women, the word fine.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they're definitely not fine when they say they're fine.
No.
That's a trap.
Right. Do not fall for that. We see Lillian sitting alone down by the lake. She's just out there staring at the water. And after a couple of moments, Sonia walks down. She's holding a glass of water. We see her sprinkle some kind of powder into it. I thought at the time that it might be like maybe aspirin or something. So like BC powder. I didn't know, but they don't really say at that point. But you only infer what it ends up being later on. So she hands the drink to Lillian, sits down beside her, trying to reassure her. She says that, maybe Harold just panicked. Sometimes people panic when they're in the water, but he's okay. She's thinking that maybe she's bothered by the whole thing with him drowning or almost drowning. Lillian doesn't really respond, and she kind of looks at her and she's like, I shouldn't have come back here. Sonia asked, were you afraid it was going to start up again? And she says it already has. I guess that's where it makes sense, because between the visions, the sleepwalking, the weird black sludge, which I'm assuming is also part of the vision, she's clearly dealing with some kind of something. It was at some points earlier on, I thought maybe it was a supernatural kind of thing. And then I was like, no, it's a psychological kind of thing.
Well, that's why I was a little confused, because again, it's like one of those things that they just threw a bunch of ideas together.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if they were doing that to kind of keep you guessing or to kind of throw you off track, but it was more confusing than anything else.
Right. Yeah. It's just another one of those, like, just pick something and go with it.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you want to be supernatural, be supernatural. If you want it because it's psychosis, be psychosis.
Right. And then they also had it could have been this person that did it and that person that did it. So they had 5 million different options going on in this movie.
Yeah, just stick with one route and just go with it.
Right. And then if it's going to be a person, you can always have a couple people seem shady. And so you never know, well, it could be this person or that person. But they almost had it so that it could have been everybody.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think the only one that didn't make it seem like it was Sonia.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Then she tells Sonia something that she's never told anyone before. And that's that when she and Bjorn were little, they lived in an orphanage, but she ended up being the only one who got a foster family to go live with. When it was offered to her, she decided to leave because she just couldn't stand being at this orphanage anymore. She ended up leaving Bjorn behind. That after she left, all she could hear was Bjorn crying all the time, and it haunted her. Eventually, she couldn't take that anymore, so she decided she needed to go back. By the time she went back, Bjorn had stopped talking, and then this is when I realized, oh, he's not deaf. He's just an asshole.
So one of the little trivia things on that is the script was written all in Danish and Norwegian, and Bjorn's actor was British speaking, and so they had him do sign language because he couldn't understand the script.
That explains his name, because I was like, he had a name that was very different. It was like McFadden.
Yeah.
It was not anything that seemed Norwegian at all or Danish in any way. And I was like, oh, it's an interesting name.
Yeah, so that's why he's British and he spoke English, but I guess he still fit the character enough where they said okay.
Right, yeah. So he had stopped talking. Then from that point is when Lillian started sleepwalking. And then she admits that since that day, she hated him a little bit, which why? Because did his not speaking cause your sleepwalking? And because you're a sleepwalker, you now hate him? What? Not his creepy, almost, I'd really like to fuck you kind of attitude he's got towards her. That I don't hate.
Right. That's fine. That's okay. It's the not talking part that really sent me into tailspin. But then at the same time, if you kind of pay attention in the beginning of the movie, she was kind of like that too, because like it took her a long ass time to even say hi to Kai when they first showed up with one another. So, she kind of does the same shit, so it's like good for you, but not for me.
Right. I just figured she was a real deep thinker and wanted to think everything. It takes me a long time to figure out how to say hello.
Right.
The next scene takes us back inside the house. Lillian is making a phone call, and it's Kai she's calling. And there's no answer. You can hear it's ringing and ringing and ringing. It apparently doesn't have voicemail either, because it just rings and rings and rings. And then we see a shot of Kai's phone sitting inside his car, which is still parked in the exact same place it was before when he was working on it before he left. So he hasn't left.
Well, as far as the voicemail, in fairness, this was 2019.
They didn't have voice. I'm surprised she wasn't sending him something in Morse code. Like, wow, where did they get these things from? What is that she's got in her hand?
Yeah, I mean, smoke signals, something.
Right. Send a pigeon.
I mean, 2019. I mean, Jesus. might as well be the 1920s.
So he's not left where they are, obviously, because his car is still there. So this makes you then think, oh, maybe he told her he was going to leave because his car seemed kind of hidden. So
Yeah.
maybe he's the bad guy. Maybe he's pissed off that she broke up with him because her brother died. Like, how dare you be mad?
Yeah, I know.
Or be bothered and break up with me. So now this is one of those avenues that they take to kind of make you think that he might be the bad guy lurking around, fucking with everything. Now we see Lillian in bed, and then she gets up in her little white nightgown thing, and she walks outside, and it's hard to tell. I can't tell if she's awake or sleepwalking at this point because her eyes are open. She seems like she's awake, but she also has this kind of distant look. So I couldn't tell at that point if she was awake or not.
Yeah, because she has that look a lot in the movie.
Yes, it's hard to tell. So, but she does look a little like dazed sometimes. But anyway, she wanders into the woods, and the deeper she goes, it starts getting a little more intense and stranger, and weird sounds are everywhere. But again, she's in the woods, so there's got to be sounds. She keeps walking, and then you see this tree, and behind the tree, you can kind of see that there's something sticking out, like something white is sticking out on the edge of the tree, and she sees it. So she starts to slowly look around the tree. And as she's moving closer, all of a sudden, as she's almost to the other side, she sees herself, but she has these black eyes and she's got all the black goo coming out of her mouth. And then she's reaching out for her. And it was a total Lake Mungo moment. It reminded me of that moment from Lake Mungo. So then Lillian, of course, freaks out. She takes off, bolts out of there. She runs out of the woods. It gets to a point where it's in slow motion now. She's sprinting towards the dock at the lake. She's going down the dock. And when she reaches the edge of the dock, she comes to this abrupt stop, kind of throws her arms back behind her, and she falls forward into the lake and plunges into the water, sinking and struggling. And then someone reaches in and grabs her. I do want to say that this movie is cinematically very beautiful. Like,
yes.
The scenery is beautiful, the shots of the lake, all the greenery, all of that. And even this image of her, because it was a really high shot up above. When you see it, it almost was like, I don't know, reminded me of like, I don't know, ballet is the way I want to say it, but it just had a very elegant feeling to it.
It was very smooth.
Yeah. When she was running down, it was way up high. You see the whole lake and the dock, and just it had a very fluid beautifulness to it when she put her arms back and then just fell forward. The only thing about it was when she fell forward is she ended up, instead of just falling forward and kind of diving head first in, she ended up putting one of her legs out, and it almost felt like it was she didn't jump, but it would be like if you had jumped, how you would go in feet first that way.
Yeah.
I was fully expecting her to just fall right into the water. But I guess she didn't want to do a face plant on the water. But it was a very pretty shot. It was very nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, even with her leg extended, it was still because it made me think that she was walking into the water.
Right.
Because I mean, she did do that stop and kind of like started leaning forward. But then like when she stuck her leg out, it was almost like she was walking into the water, even though she had that pause.
Yeah, but it was a really, really nice shot. And
it was.
And it nice, and because of that shot, and then of course all the rest of it, because the scenery was really pretty. Back at the house, you can hear the group talking, and someone says, "So you found her?" And the other person says, "Yeah." Then Sonia says to her, because Lillian then walks over to the group, and she says, "But you don't know how to swim," which is a new realization that wasn't brought up before. And it explains why Lillian never joined them in the lake. Now the conversation shifts to one way or another, they need to keep an eye on her. Between the sleepwalking, the lake, and everything else that's going on, it's getting kind of dangerous for someone like her. And Sonia says, "You could have drowned. Someone has to stay up at night just to make sure you're okay." Then Bernard immediately volunteers for the first night. And of course, Harold, these two have kind of butted heads throughout the whole movie. Harold chimes in, taking another jab at Bernard. And he says like something along the lines of, "Oh, sure. And then you can knock on the walls and try to scare everybody for your paranormal podcast." So he's still pushing the idea that Bernard is orchestrating all of this weirdness for his podcast. Harold is irritated by it and walks off. And as he's walking away, he goes to a door and he goes to open it and it's locked. But he looks to his right and he catches a reflection of himself in the mirror. So he kind of pauses for a second, but then he gets up close to the mirror and he looks and you can see that there's something black and weird in his eye. He goes over to it and he leans in closer and he's staring at it and you can see it's like this black gunk. Then Lillian appears. He looks at her for a second, then he looks back at himself and his eye is fine. Lillian says, "Are you okay?" And he's really pissy and he snaps, "What are you looking at?" And then storms off. So then we get another eerie shot of the lake. And then there's this slow creeping shot of the basement and the black sludge is still on the walls, even though no one's down there to see it. Like the one who sees the black sludge is not down in the basement to see it, but they show us a picture of it. So then it cuts to Lillian, who is in bed again, in bed a lot. And she's
Hey, I don't blame her, man.
she's just asleep until Kai gets here. The camera lingers on this large armoire that's in her room. Slowly, one of the doors of that armoire creaks open, and you see this arm and the hand pushing the door open. And then suddenly it's daylight. I was into that. And Lillian is now laying on the dock. And there's dirt on her face. There's the 2 lily pads that are laying on her abdomen. She's just lying there in the sunlight. And you think, well, this has to be a dream, right? Also, someone was supposed to be awake watching her. So she wakes up. Her hands go to touch her face and she's brushing off the dirt. And then she wakes up, fully wakes up and realizes, shit, I'm outside on the dock. So then she panics. She sees the lily pads, which freak her out even more. So she jumps up and throws them off and she's shaking off the dirt and wiping her face. You can tell she's disoriented and doesn't understand how the fuck she's down there. Then as she walks back toward the house, she passes the shed and that's when she sees Toto, her dog. But
yay
in some ways, not so much in others. So he's lying inside the shed and someone has tied rope around his mouth and tied all of his feet together with rope.
Boo.
So yeah, boo. So Lillian, of course, is like, what the fuck? She yells out, Toto. Okay, so everyone at the house could hear her yell Toto when she's all the way outside at the shed, but no one noticed her leave the house. Out there. So,
they're doing a good job.
Movie magic. Yeah, they're doing a great job keeping up with her, considering all the all this fuckery going on. So then they all come running out of the house. They all see what she sees. They stop. They're staring at it. They're like, what the fuck is this? Gabriel then steps forward, kneels down, checks on the dog. He looks up at Lillian. He says, somebody tied him up. Well, no shit, dumbass. But,
no, he did it to himself. He's doing a Houdini trick.
But he's okay. Then Bernard and Harold start arguing because everybody is like blaming everybody all the time. So Harold showed up late. So everybody had run down there except for Harold. And then Harold suddenly shows up. Bernard immediately calls him out on it. He's like, where have you been? Where did you come from? Why are you just showing up now? And then Harold scoffs and he's like, what are you talking about? And then it escalates quickly. They get really pissy with each other and it starts getting tense. Then Gabriel steps in and says, we need to call the police. And everyone agrees because that is the next logical step. So they all go into the house to get their phones, only to realize no one has a phone anymore. They're all gone. They're missing, every single one of them. And I guess the house doesn't have a phone. I mean, the house.
Yeah, I mean, it was also like in the middle of a lake.
It was 2019.
Right. I mean, they could have had a telegraph,
Then we can find their phones. They're all looking around at each other. It's getting really weird. Lillian says, oh, the radio, the one in the shed where they were just at. They rush out to the shed and lo and behold, who could possibly believe this? But the radio is smashed. Someone has put a hatchet straight through it. Unbelievable. I would not have thought that.
That was the most surprising part of the movie.
So now they're all completely cut off. No phones, no radio, no way to contact anyone. They are basically stuck there because, Bernard even said, he's like, we need to get out of here. But the problem is that they're so far out in the woods, they can't just walk. It would take forever to walk. So they're all getting a little panicky and worried about it. Harold turns on Lillian and is like, I think it's you, suggesting that she's behind all of it. Maybe she's been doing it because he asks her, what do you do when you sleepwalk? And I'm like, well, she cooks breakfast. She walks 6 steps. She ties up her dog.
She goes to the lake.
Right.
And brings back the dirt.
So he starts accusing her, and she's like, "What? You think I tied up my own dog?" And then Bernard's like, "Wait, wait, wait." And Sonia speaks up, and she's like, "That's not possible. She's been on sleeping pills all night." So that must be what the powder was that Sonia put in Lillian water earlier, where crushed up sleeping pills. So Lillian couldn't have done any of this, apparently. But anyway, it sets off all these accusations. Harold starts calling her a witch. Lillian is just kind of standing there like, what? Someone mentions that maybe Harold did it, but Harold isn't letting up. He keeps calling her a witch. And then Gabriel has had enough. He gets in Harold's face, furious, and yells at him enough. And then Bernard turns things back on Harold. He's like, well, where have you been? What were you doing? Harold scoffs and is like, what? I can't sleep? Then he throws it back at Bernard. You're knocking on walls. You're tying up dogs. You're wondering haunted here. And so basically everybody is pointing fingers at everybody except Sonia. Bernard, of course, asks Harold, like, are you sure we won't find all the phones in your room? So then Gabriel steps in again. He's like, listen, whoever is doing this is just some sick bastard messing with us. He even suggests that maybe Bjorn had gotten in with a bad crowd. All those guys in the woods.
Right. The wood mafia.
The lovers out there. And then Lillian says, oh, yeah, by the way, Kai told me that there were break-ins happening in this area recently. Gabriel's like, oh, well, maybe they're back. Maybe they're just, playing games with us. So the group decides to search the cabin just to make sure nobody's hiding inside. As they're moving through all the rooms, Gabriel asks Lillian, when is Kai coming back? And she says, tomorrow. But then next thing you know, you see that they're putting salt all around the house. And they do it in a weird way. When I see people put, salt a house or salt where they are, they spread it out on the floor in either a circle or in the doorways, something like that. But they had it like in bowls, in a salt shaker. I was like, you guys don't do this much, do you? You don't watch any shows or any paranormal things because you don't just leave it in a salt shaker. What the hell's that good? But they also said something about how if it changes colors, that means it's soaked up something, the bad stuff, I guess. Anyway, so they're putting salt all around the house to ward off ghosts because that's apparently where we are now. And this is when the movie really starts throwing everything at the wall. So we've got a possible supernatural haunting with the crazy Gruvik guy. Or even maybe her brother, if he's dead. Lillian's visions, is it trauma? Is it psychosis? Is it also something supernatural? There could be a vengeful ghost and supernatural thing is the same thing. Or is there a real living criminal messing with them from outside of their group? Or is it somebody in the
could it be Bjorn himself because he's not dead because we don't know that if he's dead or alive.
Right. It could be him too because he was just missing. Right. So then I guess the movie just wants to keep you really, really guessing about it. So yes. Then Bernard throws out there his own theory that maybe what happened is the Gruvik guy's ghost did something to Bjorn and now he's coming for them too. They're all in the living room and Bernard has this book that he found in the basement and he's looking through it. Gabriel asks, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's Bjorn's diary. Then he starts to read from it. And it's like, I think it was Monday, June 4th, maybe.
Yeah.
Bjorn writes about sitting by the lake and how it feels like the lake is staring back at him, which of course brings us back to like the Gruvik story because that guy got all caught up in the lake. So this story makes it sound like this is what's happening to Bjorn too. Bernard keeps flipping through the pages and the deeper he gets into the diary, he says the weirder it gets. He has like creepy drawings. The handwriting gets worse and more erratic. And then near the end, it's almost completely illegible. And that the last page is missing. It's been torn out, which should mean something important, right?
Right.
Yeah. But I don't think they ever reference it again.
Nope.
It's the other one that it's like, okay, so there's a letter. And there's a page missing from this book, but we never find out what the fuck those things are.
Correct.
Yeah. So good job, guys.
Impeccable writing.
Yeah. Way to leave us hanging. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's a big deal, but it's apparently not a big deal. So then Bernard decides, he's like, hey, everybody needs to listen to Kai tell his story that he had recorded earlier when they were out on the dock the day or two before. He replays the recording of Kai telling the story about Gruvik And at first, it's just Kai's voice telling the story. And then you start hearing these weird, distorted screeches. Doesn't sound very natural at all. It's not natural to like the woods sound like. Then Gabriel immediately shuts it off and he's like, it's just someone messing with us. Someone was out in the woods making noises to scare us. But Bernard, of course, is not convinced. He's like, am I the only one totally freaked out by this? So then Gabriel tries to calm everyone down. He says, we have one more night here. We leave tomorrow. Let's just get through it and go. So then he walks away, but Harold and Bernard are still kind of being combative and they start accusing each other of, doing all this stuff. He says that the sick mind and it starts escalating. So then Sonia yells at them to just stop yelling, calm down. And, she's like, you're freaking me out. We have one night left. Can we just stop? Harold pulls out a joint and he's like, well, hey, let's all just get wasted. They decide they're going to stop dealing with all this and just let loose. So they start drinking and smoking, or blasting music. They're dancing around. This is when they drape sheets over themselves, pretending to be ghosts. Yeah. So they're just being silly and goofy and I guess trying to feel normal and get through the night. Meanwhile, Lillian is upstairs. She's brushing her teeth. She's staring at the sink. Black sludge comes bubbling up out of the sink and it fills up the sink and it's spurting everywhere. And she's staring at it, horrified. And then the light flickers and it's on and off, on and off. Then they cut out completely. When you go back to see her, she's putting her hands in the sink in this black gunk, pressing her hands into it, rubbing it into her skin again. She just can't get enough of it.
It's a beauty regimen.
Yeah. So then the lights flash back on and everything's gone and everything's fine, like it never even happened. So she, shakes it off like, oh, it's just my brain doing crazy stuff again.
Just my brain.
So then she gets in the bathtub. She's got a full bath. It's a big old 5-foot tub. She leans back and she's got her head back and she closes her eyes. She doesn't because she's got her eyes closed, but we see this black sludge is now dripping down the walls. It's pooling across the floor. It's creeping up over the edges of the tub. It's now seeping into the water, turning the water black. She's completely unaware of it. I feel like she must have drifted off to sleep. And then all of a sudden she wakes up and the lights are off again. So now she reaches out, and I'm not even sure why this is in here, but she reaches out of the tub. She's reaching around and she's trying to find her towel and it's not where she left it. So she reaches a little bit further to the left. Then she gets out of the tub and she's got her, hands on the ground, on the floor, and she's reaching around trying to find her towel. And you think that the way it is, because it's dark and you see this close up of her hands and she's trying to find her towel, that something was going to happen, which it does. She finds her towel. She finds it. She puts it on. She was pretty frantic when all that stuff was happening, which made it even funnier that all she did was end up finding the towel. Right. So the lights flick back on. The next thing you know, she's put some clothes on and she is headed downstairs and calls out, hello. There's no response. The house feels a little off because it's really quiet. She notices a painting on the wall that's crooked. So she reaches out to straighten it and she looks behind it and the wall is cracking, like actively cracking as she's looking at it. And then she turns around and she sees someone standing there and it's Gabriel. So he's, looking at her for a second and he says, I think this has all been too much for you. I'll always take care of you, right? Lillian doesn't really get a chance to react because suddenly there's someone behind Gabriel. And they do this a lot in the movie too. They make you think that there's somebody scary coming up and it's just another one of the people that's staying in the house. So this time it's Bernard. He's draped in the bed sheet still, like a ghost. They kind of like half laugh or whatever. And then she heads to bed. Harold, then it's his turn to take the night watch. Everybody goes to bed. He goes to the kitchen and sits at the table, plays solitaire. But he sits at the table. So the table's in this kitchen and it's a long kitchen and the table's long too and it goes the length of the kitchen. But the kitchen isn't very wide. So the way he's sitting at the table is facing the sink, which is just at the wall right there in the kitchen. Instead of sitting on the other side of the table where he would be facing out so he could see into the living room. And if she wakes and she's sleepwalking and comes down the stairs, no, he's back to all that shit. Like, yeah, why are you sitting that way? It didn't make any sense. So he starts hearing noises and then something moves. And for a split second, kind of see there's something passing. Like you can see him and something really close to the camera is going by. So you can kind of see that. And he turns. He doesn't see anything. Then, of course, the lights go out. He stares into the darkness for a second. finds a box of matches, the long wood matches. He lights one. He's looking around. The match burns out. So he lights another one. And
I must add that match is amazing with the lighting.
Yeah, it was
because
quite fire.
Because the match lit up pretty much the entire room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could see it, which I will say, because this is a complaint I've had before when we've had another movie, is I was pissed a couple times worrying that it was going to be really dark and I wasn't going to be able to see shit. But they did make it so that there was light, and even though it was unrealistic, you could still at least see what was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very bright matchstick. He lights another one, and this is where he realizes that the basement door is open, the thing on the floor. And so it kind of freaks him out. He fumbles the match and the box of matches.
Yes.
So he now lays down on the floor completely on his entire stomach. He's looking around, looking for the box of matches because, of course, it's completely dark. While he's doing that, you see a hand come up out of the basement, and his feet are facing the door of the base. His head is at the opposite side looking for the matches. Just as he's about to get to the box of matches, the hands grab his feet and pull him downstairs, and then the door shuts, and that's it. So bye-bye, Harold. So the next day, of course, Harold's gone. Everybody obviously notices right away because we start off where Gabriel and Bernard are out in the woods calling his name. Then Bernard says, we need to go back. Kai should be there soon. And Gabriel shakes his head and says, Kai should have been there a long time ago. Something's wrong. Meanwhile, the girls are searching in another part of the woods and they're yelling out for Harold. They're walking, they're calling out, they're listening for him, but Harold seems to be nowhere. Then we go back to Bernard and Gabriel, and Bernard's speculating. He's like, what if Kai is behind all of this? Then he's like, what if it's Harold? What if he's doing this and he's just gone to make us freak out?
Right, pranking.
Yeah. Then he also brings up again the son of Gruvek. He's like, no one knows what happened to his son. Well, we know he's fucking old. He's not creeping around the woods, buddy. So apparently math wasn't big in 2019 either.
I mean, unless he was a very healthy 100-year-old man.
Yeah, maybe. Sure. So then all of a sudden, they both stop in their tracks, their faces freeze, and Bernard points and is like, what is that doing here? And it's Kai's car deep in the woods. So they both run over to it. They peer through the windows to see if anybody's in it. Nobody's in it. No sign of Kai, nothing. They open the doors. They climb inside. Bernard checks the glove box. That's where he finds all the missing phones. Gabriel's like, see, I told you. It's nothing supernatural. Someone's just fucking with us. So, and of course, some phones are also soaking wet. Bernard keeps digging in the glove box, finds the keys, or the key, it was just one key, and holds it up, gives to Gabriel. Gabriel takes the key. He tries to start the car, but it doesn't turn over. Then Bernard looks out his window. He's on the passenger side, obviously. And that's when he sees a little bit of blood on the window, smeared on the glass. He slowly turns his gaze back towards Gabriel. He sees more blood on the dashboard. Then he looks at Gabriel's. He sees on the cuff of his jacket that there's blood on that. Bernard's mind is like, oh, fuck. I'm with the one who's fucking with us. And obviously he's a killer because there's blood in him. He's been behind it the whole time. Gabriel doesn't seem to notice the blood, but decides that we need to look at the engine because it's not turning over. So he goes and then he pops up the hood, goes and looks at it. Bernard, he's hesitant about getting out of the car, and he's really hesitant about hanging out with Gabriel. Gabriel's like, hey, these wires have been cut. I need you to hold the wires together while I try to start it.
That's always safe.
Yeah. And I'm sure it'll stay started, but you let go of those wires.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
Don't forget to lick your fingers.
Right. Yeah. Is there a puddle of water you can stand in? Just anything. So Bernard is like, yeah, no, I think I'll pass. I'm just going to go back that way and maybe look for the girls. Sounds like a great idea, and let them know what the fuck's going on and not be stuck here with you, basically. He starts backing away and like, maybe we should just go back to the cabin. Gabriel pushes him like, no, just hold the wires. We need to go now. Bernard says, yeah, you fix the car. I'll go warn the girls. And then he finally just takes off running. So he's heading back towards the cabin. There's one point where he stops in the woods and he can hear the girls yelling. They're still searching for Harold. They're closer to the lake now. calling out his name. Sonia's moving more towards the lake, and Lillian stops for a second, turns around. I guess she kind of senses something or feels something off, and she looks into the woods like she feels almost like she's being watched or something. So then Sonia screams. Lillian turns around. Sonia's freaking out. She's found a body face down. So Lillian rushes over. They flip it over. It's Harold, and he's dead. It's the first dead body, actually.
Yes.
In the whole movie.
And we're kind of nearing the end.
Yeah. Lillian doesn't hesitate. She's like, Sonia, we've got to go. We've got to go now. So the two of them run. They reach the cabin. The door starts to slowly open, like all the doors seem to do in this house. And tension's building. And it's another fake out. It's just Bernard. And he's standing in the doorway looking at them and calls them inside. They explain what happened. Sonia grabs 2 knives. Bernard convinces her to put them down. He's like, we just need to figure out a way to get out of here. And then Lillian asks, where's Gabriel? And Bernard explains to her that they found Kai's car. There was blood on it. And Gabriel was acting weird. All their phones were there too. He brings that up. That's why Bernard bailed and came back to cabin, because he basically accuses Gabriel of being behind all of it. And he brings the fact that Gabriel, and this is where I found out their relationship. He brings the fact that Gabriel and Lillian had broken up at some point, and now he's either upset about it, or maybe he's trying to get her back or get some kind of revenge for breaking up with him. I don't know how this is get him back, but whatever, or get her back. But maybe he's just doing it all because of her. So Bernard tries to keep everyone calm. We need to stay together. We need to get out of here. Then he decides, here's what we do. They'll go back to the car, get it started. And in the meantime, they need to make sure Lillian doesn't sleepwalk. So I don't know why Lillian would even go to bed at this point. Like, why is she going to bed when all of this shit's going on? I don't know. So,
she's tired.
Right. She hasn't been sleeping well. So she just needs to go to bed. They decide they're going to go back to the car. They tie her to the bed with the rope. Again, don't know why. So then the next
everybody has their kinks.
I guess that must be it. So they tie her to the bed. She's laying there in bed, not asleep. She hears footsteps. They're getting closer and closer. And then Gabriel enters the room. It's dark. He's been gone for hours, by the way, working on this car. I don't know why he was gone for so long, why he didn't see the other two when they were on their way to the car. Now he wants to know what's going on. Like, why are you tied up? You can tell she's hesitant because she's afraid of him, because she thinks he's doing all this crazy shit. She's like, so I want to sleepwalk. Gabriel is moving towards her. He reaches in to grab her hand. She pulls them in real close to her. He takes her hand, starts to untie her. She's clearly tense. He asks, where are the others? And she says, they're in the living room. He says, no, they're not. I looked. She's like, they're sleeping on the couch. She's like, no, I checked. They're not there either. Then Lillian finally blurts out, oh, they're in the basement, which of course she knows they're not. She grabs them. They start going down the stairs, and she opens the door and tells him to look inside. Gabriel steps in, and Lillian slams the door and shut behind him and locks it. He's in there. He's talking to her. He's not mad or anything, but he's just like, what's going on? Open the door. She's like, I know what you did. You're sick. He's confused. He's like, what are you talking about? And then the basement door, we see it slowly opening up. Somebody's coming out. Gabriel doesn't realize there's somebody coming out because he's just trying to talk to Lily on the other side of the door. And he's begging her to open the door. He tells her he loves her. She's like, no, you're sick. I know what you did. And then you hear this loud thud. And then there's like a scuffle. And there's another thud and another scuffle. And she's like, Gabriel? And then there's silence. And so she's calling out for him again. No answer. She looks up the stairs and then you see the armoire in her bedroom creaks open again. Why? Oh. And then
it's the road to Narnia.
Right. Lillian gets down, looks through the keyhole, and there's no sign of Gabriel. So she slowly opens the door and she looks out. She doesn't see anybody or anything. She goes over and tries the front door. It's locked. She looks at all the windows. They're nailed shut. There's no way out. And then she sees in the basement. No, first she hears there's a sound, there's loud pounding from upstairs, and she sees that the basement door is open. So she naturally does what, anybody else would do. You want to go down into the pitch black basement.
Of course.
No other way out. I mean, it's the smartest decision you could ever make.
It's better than going upstairs.
Where the sound is. Right. That's
right.
True. So Lillian tries the light switch while she's down there, and of course it doesn't work. But luckily there is some dim light coming in through the cracks in the floorboards. Thank you, director, for making it so I can see. Just enough so we can see what's going on. So it's not completely dark, thank God. So she takes some steps, forward. She hears another thud. It's coming from upstairs. You can see like dirt falling down, even though at this time there was no dirt up there. So I don't know where that dirt was coming. Maybe they just sweep the dirt. Whenever they have dirt in the house, they just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
So there's actually a big pile of dirt under there. So whenever something thuds, it shakes and all the dirt falls in the base. That's it.
Right.
So whoever's up there is stomping around for whatever reason. So Lillian keeps walking further into this basement, which now feels way bigger than it was. It goes on forever. Yeah. It's just, I'm like, is this house this big? Because this cabin wasn't that big. It's a normal sized cabin. It's like a 2-story cabin. It was a decent sized house, but it wasn't huge. This basement was way bigger than that house was.
Yes.
So yeah. And it's winding and it's dark. And in the total darkness, she happens to find a flashlight. And she finds it with authority. I don't know if you noticed that. Like she knew it was there in the dark. And she just grabbed it and turned it on. So she keeps walking and she keeps walking and she keeps getting. And I'm like, what the heck? How is this basement this big? So she's looking up and down and all around. She's checking every angle. She turns a corner and then she turns another corner. And then she sees a ladder and she becomes really fixated on the ladder, which goes up to the ceiling. And she acts
just nowhere.
Yeah, she acts like, oh my God. I was like, I don't know what the big deal of that is. Okay. So I thought maybe because obviously there's some kind of secret passage or something to get into that armoire. I feel like he was moving, whoever this person was, I'm sorry, he or she, we don't know yet. So was moving up and down and through the house. And even though they don't show you secret passages, they're obviously getting around somehow in a secret way. And because when he comes out of that armoire, I feel like that armoire is connected to something other than Narnia. That she can get through the house and get like from down in the basement or wherever upstairs to her room. But I don't know because they don't show it. I just assumed there was. So I thought that maybe this ladder was going to show that, but it didn't. It's the ceiling. Then you see something kind of move behind her. Then again, it moves behind her. And she hears it this time. She turns around. There's nothing. But the tension keeps building and building. And she keeps going and going deeper and deeper into this endless basement. At this point, I swear it's bigger than the whole damn house. It's got to be like twice the size of this house. As she's walking through a big opening, and as she's walking through, her flashlight catches the mirror, and in the reflection you can see someone. She doesn't see them, but we as the viewer sees them. And she just keeps looking around. She finds another light switch and she turns it on and it turns on. But now you can see, and so now she's in this other room of the basement where it looks like somebody lives there. There's a bed, a desk, a lamp, a bunch of stuff like that. You can tell that it's obviously someone's living in that space. Then, before she can react, somewhere in the house, you see someone take a pair of pliers or whatever, and they cut the power at the power box. The light flickers out. We're back to darkness again. But she does have the flashlight. So at this point, she's basically, I guess, gone through every part of this basement. Lillian steps closer to the bed. Looks like there's something in it. She hesitates for a brief second, but then she pulls back the sheets real fast, and it's Gabriel. And he's definitely dead. He's not the bad guy. They faked us out. Right. So she stumbles back in panic. She's freaking out. She runs over to the far side of this room. She presses herself against the wall. She's looking around frantic. She hears footsteps right behind her. She spins around. Her flashlight drops. The figure steps closer and closer. And finally, it's right up by her. And who could it possibly be?
Is it Kai?
No, it's Bjorn.
Oh my God.
And just like that, I am blown away because everything just clicks. I'm like, wait, what? Bjorn's been here the whole time? Which I saw coming from the beginning, of course, because all those red herrings are working.
Yes.
But yes, apparently he's behind everything. The missing phones, the doors nailed shut, the radio destroyed, Kai missing, Gabriel dead, Harold dead, all of it. And they show flashes of him standing over her when she's in bed, him coming out of the armoire, all this. So his eyes are kind of wild. He's looking a little crazy. He reaches in for her, grabs her face, pulls her in, and squishes her head up against his chest. It's a really weird embrace. And then he pulls her face up to his, and he finally gets what he's wanted, and he kisses her. Phew.
And not on the cheek either.
No. This was definitely a hey.
Where you go? We're playing tonsil hockey.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay. Because I mean, in the beginning, even though there was no hint of this at all, they didn't directly hint to it in the beginning of it. You and I both, of course, talked that you could tell there was some weirdness going on between them. And it did not feel very brother sister.
No. And again, it was mostly one-sided.
And honestly, at the beginning, I thought they were a couple before, it was stated.
So did I.
You definitely could. So there was obviously something that made it feel that way.
Yes.
But yeah. So this happens. You cut to a scene of that boat, and Lillian is laying at the bottom. She's tied up. Bjorn is rowing. They're heading out into the lake. And then you see another set of hands and arms, and you realize, oh, Kai's here too. He's still alive, just tied up, a little groggy, it looks like. He's not like he's probably been unconscious for a hot minute, right? Bjorn then stops rowing. He reaches for a bag. It's got a bunch of heavy rocks and stones in it. He's tying up this bag, and it's just the one bag that I could see. And it takes him like a while to tie up this bag because a lot of stuff goes on during the time he's tying up this fucking bag. So he's tying it up, and it's clear what's about to happen. He's recreating Gruvik's story, and he's gonna, drag them both down, or all of them down, maybe underwater. Lillian's yelling out his name. You see where Lillian and Kai grasp hands, and even though they're back to back, their hands are there, so they kind of grasp hands. She's calling out for Bjorn. He finally looks at her. He sees the necklace. She's wearing the necklace he gave her, the locket. He reaches down, he puts it in his hand, he looks at it. I thought he was going to rip it off. But then he notices something else. He notices that Lillian and Kai are hands are together, and he does not like this. So now his attitude changes. He's kind of pissy. He gets back to tying up this bag. Then Kai sneaks a pocket knife to her, and she hides it in her hands. Bjorn, who is still distracted because he's tying up these rocks, making sure, I guess, they'll sink and stay in the bag, I guess. Very tight, very secure. Yes. So she decides to make her move. She stands up, throws herself over the side of the boat, which, of course, one, she can't swim, but also her hands are tied. So she double can't swim.
Right.
So she hits the water, she sinks down fast, and then you see Bjorn jump in after her. They both have ropes tied to their feet. You can see the ropes in the water. So she's struggling, thrashing around desperately. He grabs her, he's holding her close. He's trying to kiss her even underwater. She somehow amazingly gets the ropes untied. I don't know if she was able to use the knife. It doesn't really show, but I feel like untying a rope when it's wet like that and trying to get it is probably very hard to do.
Yeah, next to impossible.
Yeah, I would say she's cut through it. But anyway, so he's trying to kiss her underwater. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, let's move past this. Can we?
I mean, if she's supposed to move past your supposed death, you can move past this incest stuff.
Right. Just let's get over it. So she's fighting to get away. Finally, her hands are free. She has this knife, of course, and she stabs him, like, looks like in the shoulder, upper shoulder, chest area. And then she swims up, breaks through the surface, grasps for air, but of course he just grabs her again and drags her back down. She's fighting. She breaks free, kicks towards the surface. Again, he pulls her back down. They're both, flailing around underwater. And actually, it's the way it's done, again, it's like a dance. And it's a very beautifully stunning, gorgeous cinematic scene. This whole underwater thing.
The cinematography and the choreography was really good.
Yeah, I mean, as ridiculous as the situation is, it was a very nice to look at. So back to the horror. Away from the beach. So Bjorn won't let go. He's trying to kiss her again because this dude just, what the fuck? So she stabs him in his side or his stomach area. And then she throws the knife. And I'm like, why are you throwing the knife? Like, hold on to that damn knife. Like,
yeah, you're not done yet.
No, clearly the first time you stabbed him didn't work. So how can you be certain that this stabbing's worked? Hold on to the fucking knife. I feel like what was the movie we just watched? Wasn't there one recently where somebody threw the knife down and I was like, what the fuck? Oh yeah. Like,
yes.
Like, why are people throwing knives down? on. But she's free, gets away from him, and he's got the necklace in his hand. You see that it ends up getting ripped off her neck, and he's almost fighting like he's going to go up, but then he just kind of goes limp. And I don't know if he drowned because he had been underwater for quite a bit, or if he died from the stab, but he goes still, and that's it. So she also eventually becomes motionless, and she's just kind of floating in the water. And for a second, it almost looks like she's dead too. And then you see hands reach in, grab her, and pull her up. And it's Kai. He's gotten out of his rope hold. And so he pulls her in the boat. He's holding on to her. He tells her, it's over now. I'll take care of you. And then it goes to a scene where they're on the dock, and it's those two and the other two survivors, who are Sonia and Bernard. So they're on the dock and they're just talking through what happened. Lillian isn't really there per se, but she definitely has a different look to her. Her hair is done. Like, this must not be right after saving her from the depths of the water, because her hair is done really nice. She has a very different look to her face. She doesn't look like the timid, quiet, nervous girl that she did look like. And she's staring out at the lake, very distant look on her. And then we go back, and it's a flashback. So you go back to where Lillian and Bjorn are out on the lake in the beginning of the movie, when it all started. And she tells him she's leaving. You know, it'll always be them, but she's leaving. It'll always be us, but I'm leaving with this other guy. So she's leaving with Kai. Bjorn is not okay with this. And this is the part that they don't show you in the beginning. He becomes incredibly aggressive in a very awkward way. And she tells him, don't do this. He grabs her wrist. He kisses her hands. He presses his forehead against her. She tells him, you have to let me go. He is not doing that. He becomes very violent, very fast. He grabs her, pulls her into him. It's clear he's about to do something no brother should ever do to his sister.
Correct.
That's how it looks. And she's like trying to get him off of her, but then he ends up where he's choking her. He doesn't go the way I think he's going to go. He's just choking her. She's reaching out, trying to grab something. She gets her hand on the oar. She swings the oar, hits him hard in the head. Blood starts coming down. He kind of looks at her, stumbled, but also kind of angry at the same time. And then he stumbles a little bit and he falls overboard. So then for a moment he surfaces, he's struggling. Then again, he goes back under, and this time it looks like it's for good. And she's all in the fetal position in the bottom of the boat, crying and upset. So that's what actually happened at the beginning. He did not wander off into the woods and get lost or die mysteriously or get eaten by a panther or some loving woodsman. She accidentally killed him, supposedly. She thought she accidentally killed him. So all this time she's known, or at least known what she thought happened was that he was dead. But apparently he was not. Or there is some supernatural element to this lake and he managed to live on, because they don't really, I think they kind of try to leave it up to you to figure out what you think happens. Did he not die and he's just been living there going crazy by himself? Or did he go to the bottom of the lake and live forever and come back out of the lake and, some supernatural kind of thing.
Right.
But I feel like he just lived. She didn't realize it. Comes back to the present, and the lake, as it's coming out of that flashback, it shows the lake like if you were underwater, and the lake is really murky with all the little bits of this black stuff in the water, and it's dark. So she's standing there on the dock, and below her, you see a puddle of this black goop, but it's the sludge stuff or whatever. And it starts crawling up her leg, and you can see it spreading through her veins all the way to her legs and through her body and out into her arms. And then her dog, Toto, comes up and he starts barking ferociously relentlessly barking. He knows something's going on. So then Lillian turns and her eyes are almost black. And that look on her face is, again, you could tell that whatever is going on with her is shifted. It's something else. And like the lake has taken her to, I don't know, maybe she'll live forever as well. That's kind of the end, basically. But then they just kind of take you through a walkthrough of the house. It's empty. There's no people in it, but it still has all the furniture and stuff in it. Camera kind of drifts through it. You see all these old photos on the walls. And one I'm pretty sure is Gruvik with his wife and his son. Then there's a photo of just a man and a boy, which I'm guessing is just Gruvik and his son, which makes me wonder, even though Gruvik, because, Gruvik jumped off the boat. They said that, basically if you get to the bottom, you'll live forever. Did he come back to life and then live out the rest of his life with his son? Because it was originally, the first picture was him, his wife, and his son, but the second picture was just him and his son. So his wife's gone now. So did he come back? Again, just kind of leaving it up to you to figure out what you want it to be. So, and then you have one last picture, and it's of a little boy and a girl. Obviously, it's like they're the same age, so you're assuming that it's twins, and that's Bjorn and Lillian. And then that's it.
Yes. It was a definitely confusing ride. The way they left Lillian, I kind of felt like that they were trying to say that she was kind of behind it the whole time. Like, even though they had that whole scene with Bjorn, like, I kind of felt like that it was trying to say that maybe it was her that did it the whole time. And that Bjorn was just kind of like an image that she was seeing.
I didn't even think about it that way. But yeah, that could be a possible ending. Even Bjorn was a figment of her hallucinations.
Yes.
That all of that was all part of her, whatever was going on, and that she was actually the one behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I didn't even thought about that.
But they left everything way too open for interpretation of what happened. And I mean, I guess in some cases I like that, but in other cases I don't. And this is like one of those cases I don't, because there was so many ways that you could have taken this that I just would have felt if they just would have said, yeah, hey, it could have been this or it could have been this. Not like it could be this, and this, and this. Figure it out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, it was so open-ended for you to decide, but it's like there's 500 pathways to go down and 500 different versions of each of one of those, because it could have been this pathway with this person, but it could have been that pathway with another person or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It was all different. Again, another movie where they just could not pick something to go with, which is why I would like to see the original, just to see, because that was back in the 1950s. I think I said 1959 or something.
Yeah.
That came out. I'm thinking they probably didn't do that much back then. So it would be interesting to see that view and their take on it from back then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't terrible. I'll definitely say that. Like, it was definitely, a decent movie. I do wish it picked a theme and went with it, or instead of leaving everything open-ended. I wish there was a way that you could English dub it.
Yeah.
Not for the fact of not liking the language barrier or anything like that. It's just when you're trying to review a movie, it's kind of hard to pay attention to what's on the screen, as well as trying to keep up with the plot through the words.
Yeah.
So I do wish that there was some English dubbing to it, but we got what we got. And like I said, it wasn't terrible. Again, every movie is going to have its flaws, but I thought for what it was, I thought it was decently acted. The cinematography, as we spoke about, was fantastic.
Yeah.
In almost every aspect of it. I wish they could have left out the blatant calling out of the movie references, because I think it's more fun if you pick them up on your own.
Yeah.
Rather than them referencing it.
Right, yeah.
Because, I totally had the Evil Dead feel to it, but I didn't need it to be called out.
Right, yeah. At
least that one scene, because it was very reminiscent of that. And it just felt like it was just more of a, hey, look what I did. But no, I liked it. I will say that I liked it. It wasn't a fantastic movie. I don't think I'd ever really watch it again. Uh-huh. But if it was like something that just kind of like it came on TV, if I'm ever watching like random TV, I wouldn't necessarily shut it off.
Right. What would you give it? What would your sense be?
I'd say 6 cents. And a lot of that has to do with the acting and the cinematography. Right. Because I think the actors did well with what they had, and the cinematography was just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say 6 as well. I was reading the reviews on IMDb after I watched it the second time, and they were not liking it at all. They were giving it some shit.
Yeah, they were rough.
They were real rough on it. And one of the things that I also saw said that despite its rich heritage and production quality, Lake of Death received mixed reviews. Critics noted that while the film boasts stunning visuals and a tense atmosphere, it leans heavily on familiar horror tropes, which it does.
Yeah.
Offering a narrative that may feel predictable to seasoned horror enthusiasts, which it did.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But there was something about it that made it so that I didn't hate it. Like, I wasn't just like, ugh, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. And again, yeah, the cinematography was fucking phenomenal. It was beautifully choreographed in a lot of places. And yeah, I think the acting was bad. Of course, Lillian throughout the movie, she was very monotone, basically. She wasn't overly like crazed or wild or crazy. So she basically was the same throughout it. But so she was, whatever.
I think though that kind of plays into a little bit like Lillian's character, being monotone and kind of like hey, I'm here.
Right.
Kind of plays into the idea that maybe it was her the whole time.
Yeah,
because she's the most least expected character because she's so calm.
Yeah,
and
troubled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another reasons why I thought with the ending scene that it was possibly her that was kind of doing it all, and everybody else, and Bjorn was the delusion.
That's true. All right. So, any other things you'd like to add, or
no? We can put a sock on this one.
Another sock. All right. Maybe we should give it how many socks do we want? All right. So that's Lake of Death, a film that left us with a lot of questions, a few unsettling visuals, and at least one very strong reminder to never ever go near a lake with a history. As always, thanks for listening to 2 Cents We See Scary Movies. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow, subscribe, or whatever it is your podcast app demands of you. And if you really liked it, leave us a review. It helps us more than you know. Next time, we'll be covering
Fever Lake. It's a gem from 1997 starring Corey Haim and Mario Lopez.
Right, well, so get ready for more scares, more theories, and probably more reasons to never trust anyone who suggests a weekend getaway in the middle of nowhere. Until then, be scared, be prepared, and don't get caught in the dark.